everyone online says, take action, work hard, work hard, work hard. But what happens if before you take action, you get so nervous or you start overthinking before you take action and it prevents you from taking action? This is an exact experience that I've gone through a lot when I was younger, 4 to 5 years ago. And it's been an absolute journey to overcome this. And in today's video, I'm basically just going to talk about all of the things that I've learned, things that have helped me get over that, and some reframes that potentially and hopefully help you if you're going through the same thing at the same time. I'm going to give an example just to kind of help paint the picture along the video. So let's just imagine that you are someone who wants to create a YouTube channel, for example. Every time you come to recording a video, you have a fear inside of you that the video is not going to be as good as you want, and therefore that fear just prevents you from recording. Or for example, you have a fear that someone you know might see the video and they might ridicule you for it, and for that reason it prevents you from recording. And this is the kind of fear that I'm talking about, this overthinking fear that just causes you to shut down internally and therefore have complete resistance to doing the thing even though you actually want to do it. And this fear basically comes from an irrational belief or an overinflated idea of what consequences are of this thing going bad. So for example, the first example of you having a fear that the video is not going to be as good as you want, this person has an overinflated idea of the consequence of them recording a video and it being crap, basically. And because of that, they don't want to face that consequence. And because they don't want to face that consequence, they'd rather not put themselves out there, as it's a safer option than potentially trying to record the video and then realizing that they're not as good as they think they are, or watching the video back and just cringing internally. And that equation in their head is essentially what's blocking them from taking action, because internally you're like, I would rather, or it's less painful for me to not do the thing that I want to do than to do it and then have to face the consequences that I've made up in my mind, by the way. And that's the part they don't understand, is that these consequences that they've made up in their mind are overinflated. They're really far away from reality. And one of the biggest examples that a lot of people can relate to is the fear of judgment of other people. I used to have this before I started YouTube, I've also tried to start an Instagram page before. I used to be really, really scared of what people will say if they saw my video. And then I posted my video and I'm like, oh, like a lot of people are actually supporting this. A lot of people are speaking positively to me. A lot of people saying like, yo, you're doing good stuff. And even the comments that I did get, they were so minimal. Like my expected reality of what would happen after I posted my video was so completely different from the actual reality. And that's the main point. We over-exaggerate the consequences that are going to happen if they happen. Sometimes it really takes you just asking yourself like, hey, what's the absolute worst case scenario that can happen? And then you start repeating it in your head and you're thinking through the scenarios and like, wait, maybe this is not actually bad as I thought. This fear that you have of that thing, one way to think about it is the cost or the purchase price that you must pay in order to become comfortable doing that thing that you're currently uncomfortable doing. So for example, recording the video, let's just say, like I said, I have a fear of people's opinions. If I see recording my first video and putting it out there and facing the fear of what people might say as the cost required to become the type of person who posts things without a care in the world about what people think, then I'm going to be more inclined to face that fear, because I understand it's a progression from the person I am right now and the person I want to be in the future. And really this process of thinking of doing an action, facing a fear, overcoming the fear, and then, surpassing that fear because that action now becomes your norm. This is just a cycle that is basically fitting to any action that you want and any fear that you want as well in the world. Any fear in the world from taking action, it basically fits into that cycle. And that cycle is basically a muscle. There are certain people that every time they want to do something and they face a fear, they will listen to their fear. And there are some people that every time they want to do something and they get a fear, they smash through that fear. They see it as an objective. They see it as a challenge. They're like, nah, man, I'm not letting that hold me back. And if this process is a muscle. The more you think of an action, face a fear, and overcome that action, the more you will do it, the better you will become at it. The more you will become someone who doesn't allow their emotions to control them. And the opposite is also true. You can become someone whose muscle to listening to their fears is very strong, and therefore you never get anything done. And if you think about the long-term trajectory of these two different people, and where they become in life, the self-belief they have, the skills they have, the how they respond to fears and overthinking, it is a massive catastrophical difference, right? The person that always listens to their fear is always going to be in their comfort zone. They're never going to achieve any of the goals and aspirations they have. They still have dreams and aspirations, but they're gated by their fear. Whereas the other person is always striving towards their goals, has immense self-belief because it has a lot of proof to depend on to suggest that he will achieve what he's achieved because he's pushed through so much fear. And yeah, generally in life, they're just going to be happier. They're going to be where they want to be. And they're not going to be gated by their own fears and self-belief. I feel like sometimes as well, jumping into a fear that is too big for you right now is dangerous. Like, for example, don't do something that is 100 steps away from your tolerance of fear right now. It should be gradual. It should be like, imagine your fear or your comfort zone is a circle. What you should go for is a little bit outside of your circle, and then a little bit outside of your circle, and then a little bit outside of your circle. That's how you make it progressive. That's how you make it natural. That's how you make it easy for yourself. Instead of, you being here and then trying to go for something here. That doesn't make sense. But it's a lifelong journey. And I think that the more you stick with this and the more consistent you are, the better and the more exponential the results will be over time. Good luck.